My father invited me to a casual board meeting. When I arrived, he pointed to the lobby chair and said, "You can wait there. We need the main table for the shareholders." I nodded, ordered a whiskey, slipped my card to the concierge, and said, "Charge everything on that table to their account." You ever get that sinking feeling before something even happens? That gut-level warning that says, "Don't do it," and you do it anyway? That's how this started. My name is Marcus. I'm 38 years old, living in Austin, Texas. Technically, I'm part of one of the biggest family-run conglomerates in the South, but I'm the only one not allowed a seat at the table, literally and figuratively. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I got the text from my dad. Just 2 sentences, no punctuation, as usual. Quick meeting at the boardroom lounge Friday. Casual. Just family. I stared at the screen, already feeling my blood pressure tick up. The last time he invited me to a casual meeting, I ended up footing the $2,400 tab for a steakhouse dinner because, in his words, "You're not married and have no dependents. You can afford it." My younger sister Hannah had ordered 3 bottles of wine that night. My Uncle Ray had tipped the valet $100 with a wink. I hadn't said a word, just paid the bill and drove home wondering how I let it happen. But here I was again, text in hand, that tight, dry feeling in my throat. I should have said no, but instead, I typed back, "Sure, see you then." Friday, 6:12 p.m. The hotel was upscale, one of those modern places downtown with soft lighting and leather everything. When I walked into the lounge, I already spotted them. Dad, Uncle Ray, Aunt Margie, my cousins Angela and Preston, and of course, Hannah, all seated around a grand circular table that looked like it was reserved for people who actually made decisions. As I approached, Dad looked up, waved vaguely, then nodded toward a dark corner. "There's a seat over there, Marcus," he said. "We'll just be a few minutes. This is for shareholders." I stared at him for a beat, not even surprised anymore. I just nodded. Of course. I turned and headed for the empty leather chair he'd pointed at, practically shoved against the back wall next to a lamp with a dying bulb. The kind of seat you put your coat on. The server came over after a minute. "Can I get you something to drink, sir?" I gave her a tired smile. "Whiskey? Neat." I pulled out my wallet and slid my black card across the coaster. "Charge everything on the table under the Lewis corporate account," I said, quietly. "Name's already on file." Her eyebrows raised slightly, but she nodded and walked away. And that was it. That was the moment. I sat back, sipped my drink, and watched them, laughing, joking, clinking glasses, Dad holding court like always. Like a king with a fake crown and a very real ego. Let them talk. Let them drink. Let them order seafood towers and top-shelf wine. Because this time, it wasn't coming out of my pocket. This time, the joke was on them. From the corner, I could see everything. Hannah tossing her hair like she was on a talk show. Uncle Ray retelling some story that had to be at least 20 years old, judging by the way he laughed before the punchline. My dad doing that smug half-nod thing he always did when someone made a joke at someone else's expense. Nobody looked toward me, not once. They were celebrating something, a product launch, I guessed. Probably another high-end line of family-inspired olive oil or whatever trendy nonsense they were selling this quarter. A toast went up for fresh beginnings, and someone shouted, "To the Lewis legacy." I swirled the last bit of my whiskey and glanced at the clock. Almost 2 hours in. I didn't need to stay, but I wanted to see it happen. Then, finally, the server returned to their table. She carried a sleek leather folder with the check, her posture a little too rigid to be casual. I recognized the shift in her energy. I'd been there. That pause before the storm. She handed the check to my dad. At first, he smiled, probably assuming the tab was comped, or that it was something trivial. Then he opened it. I heard his voice before I saw his face. "What the hell is this?" The table fell silent. Every head turned toward him. My dad slapped the folder down in front of Uncle Ray. $3,462? For what? The server spoke gently. "Sir, that's for the group's total food, wine, dessert, and gratuity. The charges were placed on the Lewis corporate account by your guest in the corner." Heads turned, slowly, one by one, until they were all looking at me. I stood up, adjusted my jacket, and walked over calmly. "Evening," I said. "Just came to pay for my drink. 1 whiskey. Neat. Should be around $16. I looked at my dad. "Everything else? Already taken care of. Enjoy the company card." I turned and walked away before anyone could speak. Behind me, I heard Hannah say, "Wait, what just happened?" Then Uncle Ray's gruff voice. "He charged all of it to the business?" Then my dad, full volume now. "You think this is funny? You think this is some kind of stunt?" But I was already out the door. 9:52 p.m. My phone started vibrating before I even got to the parking garage. First a call from my dad. Declined. Then 2 texts from Hannah. "Marcus, what the hell? Dad's freaking out." Then another from Aunt Margie. "You need to fix this tonight." Fix what? I thought. My only regret was not ordering another drink. I put my phone on silent and drove home. 11:07 p.m. The knocking came hard and fast. I opened the door, and there they were. My dad, standing stiff and red-faced. My mom behind him, arms crossed tight, eyes already glossed with tears. He didn't wait. "You arrogant little." He threw a sheet of paper at my feet. A printed invoice. "This is theft," he barked. "This is betrayal, Marcus. You've humiliated me in front of the board." I looked at the paper on the floor, then back at him. "All I did," I said, quietly, "was stop paying your tab." My mom jumped in, her voice trembling. "Why would you do this to your father? To your family?" I didn't answer. Not yet. I let them talk. I let him yell. Let her beg. Let the whole performance wash over me like a cold shower. Because I knew what came next. And I was ready for it. I didn't flinch. Not when my dad shouted about betrayal. Not when my mom whispered that I was breaking the family. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, waiting for them to run out of steam. When they finally paused, I bent down, picked up the invoice from the floor, and glanced at it. $3,000 for 62. I said flatly. Looks about right. You think this is a joke? My dad snapped, stepping forward. You've always been jealous. Always wanted to make a scene. You could have just said no, but you had to embarrass me. I looked up, calm as ever. You're angry because I mirrored your treatment. That stopped him. Just for a second. He blinked, confused, like I'd spoken another language. What? You've sidelined me for years. Used me. Dismissed me. I shook my head. I finally drew a line. And now it's betrayal? He scoffed. Don't be dramatic. You think one dinner makes up for all your freeloading? Freeloading. I laughed once, sharp. I paid for your cruise last Christmas. The suite at the Fontainebleau? That was me. You said I didn't need the points. He clenched his jaw. My mom's eyes darted between us like she was watching a tennis match she never wanted to attend. I gave you everything, he growled. I brought you into this family. No, I said. You brought me in as a backup wallet. He shook his head and stormed out of the condo without another word. I turned to my mom. He's not used to consequences, I said softly. That's all this is. She looked at me like I was a stranger. I don't recognize you anymore, she said. I nodded. Good. The door slammed behind her. 10 minutes later, I was in the kitchen pouring a glass of water when I heard it, a sharp crack, like something thick and heavy striking glass. I froze. Then I heard the car alarm. I sprinted to the balcony. Below, on the curb, my coupe's passenger side window was gone, shattered into jagged glitters. My father stood beside it, half turned toward the street, his hand still raised. In his other hand? Nothing. But I saw the rock. It had bounced onto the sidewalk, chipped and gray. A clean throw. I didn't yell. I didn't run outside. I just walked back in, calm, collected, and opened the home security app on my phone. Clear as day. The front camera had caught it all. My father, stepping back, swinging, the rock breaking glass. His expression afterward, smug and satisfied. The next morning, I walked into the police station wearing slacks and a pressed shirt. I had the footage downloaded. I had the printed invoice from last night. I filed the report without hesitation. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I want restitution, I said. No jail, just accountability. 3 weeks later, he paid the fine, wrote the check through a lawyer, didn't speak to me directly, didn't even send a note. And that was when it really hit me. We weren't family anymore. We were a set of transactions. A chain of IOUs and unpaid debts disguised as tradition. And now, the mask was off. I wasn't looking for revenge, but I was finally done waiting to be seen. It took me 2 days to act. I wasn't just angry. I was awake. And for the first time in a long time, I was thinking clearly. There was one last tie left to cut. The so-called Emergency Family Business Fund, a slush account they created for cash flow issues. After a temporary downturn 3 years ago, I'd been contributing 10 grand a month ever since. Every month, like clockwork, like a sucker. They said it was to keep payroll stable and cover surprise expenses. But I had access to the account. They made sure of that when they needed my help. They just assumed I'd never look too closely. They were wrong. Sunday, 3:19 p.m. I logged in. First thing I noticed? The balance, $186.23. I blinked. That couldn't be right. But it was. Because over the past 9 months, they'd spent almost every dime. It didn't take long to find the worst of it. $2,800 for a weekend at Lake Austin Spa and Resort, booked under my mother's name. For $1,200 to Internship Consulting Group, which turned out to be a front for designer handbag purchases. I reverse image searched the receipt. Gucci, limited edition. $1,100 to the Plush Room, a private cigar lounge my Uncle Ray pretended to hate but visited twice a week. $6,700 marked technical consulting, wired to a freelance DJ who did Hannah's birthday yacht party. Payroll? Crisis? Please. This wasn't survival. This was theft with better branding. I took a breath, then got to work. First, I withdrew the remaining $186.23. Petty? Maybe, but it was mine. Then I changed the password, removed all auto transfers from my account, and revoked all secondary access. When I was done, I closed the laptop and waited. Monday, 10:32 a.m. The first text came from Preston, my cousin. Hey man, getting weird errors logging into the fund. Did you mess with it? 10 minutes later, Hannah, why is the account frozen? Then Aunt Margie, please call me immediately. Then my father, just one line. What the hell do you think you're doing? I didn't answer any of them. By lunch, the calls started. I blocked them as they came in, one by one. Preston, blocked. Ray, blocked. Margie, blocked. Hannah, blocked. Dad, blocked. Mom called twice. I stared at the phone, let it ring out both times. Then I blocked her, too. There was no message to deliver, no speech to give. The silence said everything. I thought I'd feel sad. I didn't. I felt something else. Weightless, untethered, free. Let them scream. Let them scramble. If they wanted their lavish lifestyle back, they could pay for it themselves. For once, they waited a full week before trying again. It was a Tuesday evening when the knock came. Not loud or aggressive, polite, even. like they were the ones being careful this time. I opened the door and found all of them on my doorstep. Dad in his press slacks and that too perfect, concerned patriarch look on his face. Mom holding a pink box tied with string pastries from that overpriced French place they used to call Too Rich for breakfast. Hannah, dressed like she was auditioning for a commercial about forgiveness. Even Preston stood there, hands in his pockets, pretending not to be the same guy who once called me the family's debit card with legs. Marcus, Mom said, like I was a stranger. We came to talk. As a family. They acted like the past month hadn't happened, like they hadn't raged at me through voicemails or thrown rocks through windows, like we were just picking up after a small disagreement. I stood there in the doorway, saying nothing. We want to start over, Dad said. Clean slate. We were wrong, Hannah added, eyes all glassy like someone had coached her on how to look emotional without actually crying. We've just been stressed. Mom lifted the pastry box slightly, like it was a peace offering. We thought maybe we could have dinner. Just us. Reconnect. I paused for a beat, then smiled. Dinner sounds great. You should have seen the relief on their faces. Like I'd just forgiven years of passive aggression, condescension, and financial drain with 2 words. I set the plan myself. Friday night, private rooftop restaurant, full menu, wine pairings, valet, classy, elegant, everything they loved. And I handled every detail personally. Called the manager, explained the situation, asked for a private room with soundproof doors and extra attentive service. I picked the floral arrangements, pre-approved the wine list, made sure the lights would dim halfway through dessert for ambience. Then I left my card on file, not mine, of course. The Lewis corporate card, same one they'd used like a magic wand for years. I even made a special note with the maitre d'. If anyone asks where I went, just say I had to step away for business. They'll understand. Friday, 7:58 p.m. I arrived early, charcoal suit, no tie, confident smile. They were already at the table when I walked in. Marcus, Aunt Margie clapped her hands. This place is stunning. Preston raised his glass. Now this is the kind of reunion we needed. Dad gave me a long look. I'm proud of you, he said, as if that sentence had ever come easy to him. Took guts to push back. Sometimes families need friction. Sure, like a tire iron to the face builds character. I nodded, kept smiling. I let the night unfold. Drinks flowed. Appetizers vanished. My mother took photos of the centerpiece. Hannah asked if we could do this every month, maybe. And then, after the second round of entrees, I stood up. Excuse me, I said, glancing at my phone. My assistant needs me for a quick contract issue downstairs. I pushed in my chair and smiled one last time. Don't wait on dessert. And I walked out, not rushed, not flustered, calm. Elevator to the lobby, straight to valet. I tipped in cash and never looked back. 2 hours later, a single text from Hannah lit up my phone. Marcus, where the hell are you? They just gave us the bill. You're kidding, right? Then Dad, this is childish. Then Mom, call me now. I powered down the phone, set it on my nightstand, and poured myself a drink. Let them argue. Let them scramble through the corporate card authorization. Let them realize what it feels like to be stuck with the tab you thought someone else would cover. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the silence afterward, the space where their power used to be. I didn't hear from them for 2 days. Then, Sunday night, the storm hit. The pounding on my condo door rattled the frame. I opened it slowly, already knowing who I'd find. Dad, Mom, Hannah, all of them red-faced, bristling with outrage. You think this is funny? My dad barked, stepping inside without being invited. You humiliated us, Mom hissed, barely holding the pastry box she'd brought days earlier, now crushed in her fist like some ironic relic. You're a manipulative bastard, Hannah said. You just wanted revenge. They were yelling over each other, throwing accusations like darts, but I didn't flinch. I walked into the living room and sat down on the arm of the couch, hands folded calmly. Are you finished? I asked. My dad threw a hand in the air. You've made your point, Marcus. You're bitter. You've got a grudge. We get it. Now grow the hell up. I tilted my head. Do you know who's been paying for your tuition? I asked, looking at Hannah. The room fell silent. She blinked. What? Your MBA? I said evenly. The one at NYU. You think the family fund paid for that? She stared at me, mouth open. I stood, walked over to the bookshelf, and pulled out a slim black folder. From it, I withdrew a single page, a printout of the tuition payment history. I handed it to her. She scanned it, slowly, then stopped. Her voice came out small. Why does it say anonymous wire transfer, M.L.? Dad looked between us. What is this? I've been paying for her education, I said, still calm. Quietly, for 2 years. I turned to my mother. And remember that time you told the family you had to pull money from your retirement fund to help her out? That was a lie. I was the one covering it. You never told us, she whispered. No, because it was never about credit. I walked back to the folder and pulled out another sheet. And here, I said, handing it to Dad, is a breakdown of the second fund I started 3 years ago, one you never knew about. It was meant for emergency family expenses, not the fake one you drained with spa visits and cigar rooms. This one was real. He looked down, frowning. You put $90,000 in here? And never touched a cent, I replied. Until last week, when I pulled it all out and shut it down. Mom sank onto the couch like someone had pulled the strings out of her. You're cutting everything off, she whispered. Yes, but what about Hannah's last semester? Dad said, voice rising. She's got 1 semester left. She can't finish without that money. I shrugged. You want her to finish school? I said, stepping closer. Then you figure it out. No, Hannah said quietly, still staring at the page. You're bluffing. You wouldn't do this to me. Not after everything. I raised an eyebrow. Everything like laughing while Dad shoved me into the corner at the board meeting? Or letting me fund your fake internships while you posted luxury shopping hauls online? I paused. No more secrets, I said. No more quiet generosity. No more being the backup plan. My dad stood frozen, fist clenched, jaw grinding. My mom blinked slowly, her face blank with something that looked a lot like shame. Hannah looked down at the tuition sheet in her hands and said nothing. This isn't revenge, I told them. It's math. They left in silence. And this time, I didn't watch them go. I closed the door, sat back down, and waited, because I knew what was coming next. Truth is, they'd never seen me clearly. Until now, I didn't speak to anyone the next day. Instead, I gathered the proof. 3 simple files. That was all it took. The full transaction log of my payments into both family accounts. A detailed breakdown of who benefited, spa bills, private schools, rent paid, credit card bailouts. And finally, a handwritten note from my dad, dated 5 years ago, thanking me for stepping up when no one else could and calling me the quiet backbone of this family. I snapped photos of each and sent them in a group message. No words, no explanation, just the facts. I didn't have to wait long. The typing bubble started immediately. Hannah, Mom, then Dad, but I didn't open them. I didn't need to. That message wasn't for discussion. It was a record, something undeniable, cold, clinical. The next morning, my doorbell rang. It was Angela, my cousin, the only one who had never asked for money. She stood there in jeans and a hoodie, hair up in a loose knot, hands buried in her sleeves. They said you were spiraling, she said after a second. Said you were having some kind of breakdown. I gave her a tired smile. Is that the story now? She nodded. Said you snapped. That you were unstable. That you needed help. I stepped aside and let her in. She walked to the kitchen and leaned against the counter. But I know you, Marcus. You don't snap. You calculate. She said it like it was a compliment, like she was seeing me for the first time. I poured us both a coffee and didn't say a word. Angela looked down at her mug. You know what really gets me, she said. They don't even see it. The way they treated you. It was like you were never a person, just a resource. That hit harder than I expected. A resource. Not a brother, not a cousin, not a son. Just a thing they leaned on. Angela sipped her coffee. They're panicking now. Your mom tried calling me. Asked if I'd talk some sense into you. Said she was worried you were isolating. I scoffed. I'm not isolating. I'm disappearing. Angela didn't argue. She just nodded and said quietly, good. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sun cut lines across the floor. The condo was quiet. My phone was on silent. Nothing buzzed. No one knocked. That night, I pulled a duffel bag out of the closet and started packing. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't write a letter. I didn't leave a note. I just folded shirts, zipped the bag, and took one last look around. I wasn't running away. I was leaving everything they thought they owned. The silence was mine now, and I intended to keep it. The new city wasn't flashy. No skyline postcards, no luxury downtown high-rises. It was 3 states over, smaller, quieter, and perfect. I rented a modest place on the edge of town. 2 bedrooms, simple kitchen, a little fenced-in backyard. No family names on the mailbox. No one who looked at me and saw a bank. I didn't tell anyone where I went, not even Angela. I closed every shared account, removed my name from anything with the word family in it. I called the corporate card company and told them to remove my authorization entirely. I wasn't just cutting off access. I was removing my shadow from their systems. Then I bought a prepaid number, burned the old SIM, and finally, I opened a fresh bank account with a local credit union, one with no history, no auto transfers, and no names tied to mine. It felt like waking up. For the first time in years, I didn't start my day responding to crisis texts or bailing someone out of a temporary issue. I didn't check fund balances or cover luxury purchases disguised as emergencies. I drank coffee, read the paper, sat on the porch at night, and listened to crickets instead of calls. Of course, they found ways to reach me. Voicemails. Somehow, they still had the old number. I checked the inbox once a week, just to remind myself I made the right call. We just want to talk. You can't just vanish, Marcus. This is your mother. I don't understand how you could be so cold. We're your family. This is your father. If you don't answer soon, I'll assume you're done for good. That last one made me laugh. Done? I'd been done for years. They just hadn't noticed. Then the threat started. An email from my aunt, forwarded through a business contact I hadn't spoken to in a decade. We're exploring legal options. You had a fiduciary role in family accounts. There are implications. That was the word they used. Implications. I sent no reply. Just filed the message under a folder labeled noise. There were no contracts. No signatures, no board votes, no written agreement stating I was required to fund their lifestyle. They relied on one thing, guilt, and I'd finally stopped renewing the subscription. The silence that followed was beautiful. No letters, no lawsuits, not even a birthday card. I was untethered, not bitter, just clean, like I'd stepped out of a fog that everyone else still thought was air. I got a job consulting again. Quiet clients, small teams. I worked less, earned more. No late-night wire transfers. No holiday gifts that came with backroom bills. And best of all, I started sleeping. Actually sleeping. Not the kind where your brain's calculating everyone else's overdraft fees in your dreams. One morning, about 2 months in, I walked to the local diner, ordered eggs and coffee, and read the news in silence. Nobody called. Nobody needed anything. Nobody remembered my number. And for the first time in my entire adult life, that didn't make me feel alone. It made me feel like I was finally home. 3 months passed. The air in the new city had a different kind of quiet, not just silence, but peace. I didn't miss the noise. I didn't miss the boardroom games or the hollow toasts. I didn't miss being the person they only remembered when the bill came due. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, but something nudged me to answer. "Hello, Marcus," the voice said. "It's Uncle David." I froze. Uncle David, the one they never listened to. The one who always sat 2 seats away from the center of the table and rarely spoke unless spoken to. He was Dad's older brother, the only one in the family who ever treated me like I had a mind of my own. "Hi," I said cautiously. "Wasn't expecting to hear from you." "I know," he said. "I got your new number from Angela." Of course he did. I made a mental note to thank her for that, and maybe change it again. "I'll keep this short," he continued. "I thought you should know. Things are different now." I didn't speak. He kept going. "Your dad's been working weekends at that old repair shop near Midtown. Says it's temporary, but it's been a month." That was hard to picture. My father, hands dirty, standing behind a counter with grease on his sleeves instead of his usual tailored suits. "Your mom pulled out of all her club commitments," he added. "Says she's simplifying, but it's clear people stopped inviting her." "And Hannah?" I asked, without meaning to. "She moved back home," he said. "Dropped out of the program. Works nights at a bistro now. She's sharing rent with 2 roommates." I let the silence stretch. "I'm not telling you this to guilt you," Uncle David said. "Just figured you should hear it from someone neutral." "What do they want?" I asked. He sighed. "I don't know what they want, but I know what they're planning." He paused. "They're going to ask for forgiveness. And this time, I think they actually mean it." I didn't answer right away, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure what I felt. Pity? No. Satisfaction? Not exactly. Relief? Maybe. That I didn't need to carry any of it anymore. "Finally," I said, "let them heal without me. I'm not ready to go back." Uncle David chuckled quietly. "Didn't say you had to. Just thought you should know." "Thanks," I said, meaning it. But I added, "if I do ever come back, it won't be to reconnect. It'll be to observe." He laughed again. "You always did watch more than you talked." We said goodbye. And as I stood by the window, watching the sun dip behind the rooftops of a town that didn't know my name, I felt something shift again, but gentler this time. Not closure, just clarity. They could fall apart. They could rebuild. I wasn't responsible for either. I was free to watch or not. That was the difference now. The choice was finally mine.